Defending Israel with David Harris on JBS is made possible in part by a generous gift in memory of Eric and Mira J. Spector, the Paul and Lynn Late Family Foundation, To Life, to Love, Barbara and Bob Goodkind, the Patricia Worthen Ullman Foundation,
Hello JBS viewers, I'm David Harris and this is Defending Israel. And this week we have another very special guest. In fact, I would call him a legendary figure, particularly in American sports. And that is the coach of Auburn University's basketball team. As many of you know, I'm sure, Auburn has been one of the great teams, making it into the Final Four in this year's NCAA madness. And on top of that, Bruce Pearl has another life. And we're going to explore that other life of Bruce Pearl as a Jew, a friend of Israel, and a patriot of the United States. Bruce, welcome to the program.
Well, David, it's great to be with you, and that's quite an introduction and a lot to live up to, especially coming from somebody that yourself that has served our folks, our people so very, very well. So thank you, and God bless you for your service.
Well, thank you. And it comes from the heart, not from the teleprompter. Bruce, let's begin at the beginning for those of our viewers who may not have met you before. Talk to us a little bit first about your childhood, your upbringing, your home, and what was the Jewish piece of that story?
Well, I grew up in Boston, born in Roxbury. I was a Blue Hill Avenue Jew from the very, very beginning. And for those people that lived in Mattapan and Dorchester know what Blue Hill Avenue is all about. It was a Zionist piece of property back in the late 50s and early 60s. My grandparents all immigrated. My papa, who was my greatest role model, left Turnipole at age 11 with his three younger siblings. My Auntie Shirley, my Auntie Claire, and my Uncle Harold came over as an infant. Not all of Papa's family could afford the trip, so many of them stayed, and most of them perished either from the pogroms or in the Holocaust. And so, being born in 1960, 45 years after 6 million of our brothers and sisters were murdered for their faith, I'm old enough to be very sensitive to that, and having grown up, at that time. Papa was a plumber, and he was a tradesman, but he was an Orthodox Jew. He kept kosher. Yiddish was the language spoken in the house. English was sort of the second language, and it was a broken English. And my goal and dream in life was to get bar mitzvahed and wrap tefillin with Papa at his temple. Even though Papa went to temple in his dirty work clothes in the morning service, and he was then surrounded by other men, most of whom were in suits and ties and looked just like they were perhaps wealthier, more educated, so on and so forth. My papa was still welcomed and respected, and his grandson was able to go with him and pray with him. And that was my real foundation, and then my real connection. My parents then moved when I was 5 years old out of Boston and out into the suburbs of Sharon, Massachusetts, and which actually became a Jewish community. Maybe about 30-40% of the population of that town, about 45 minutes southwest of Boston, were Jewish. So I had a wonderful temple, conservative background, and I had a great foundation, which I think was really important to who I have become as a Jewish American.
And Bruce, your first trip to Israel was when?
I'm embarrassed to say my first trip to Israel was not till 2009. I did not do Maccabiyah. David, my plan and my goal was to do what Idan Alexander did, and that was right after. Actually, Idan did it after high school. I was going to, after college, go to Israel and join the IDF or some service that I could join for a few years and then come back and start my life. Unfortunately or fortunately, at age 21, as a senior at Boston College, my head coach, Dr. Tom Davis, got offered the Stanford job out in California. And I was a practice player for him. And more than that, I was a manager, and I worked for him in every capacity for 4 years at Boston College just because I loved it. He asked me to go with him to be an assistant coach. So there went my plan right out the door. And so at age 21, I was an assistant coach at Stanford. And I've been in coaching now for 48 years or so, 47 years or something along those lines. So 2009, I coached the USA team in the Maccabi. And we actually won the gold medal. We played Israel in the finals, and I'm grateful that Israel does not lose at home very often, but they lost in overtime to the United States team. The biggest challenge I had, the three officials were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I was getting screwed. I couldn't get a call all game long. I kept on telling the refs, look, I'm one of you. Guys, I'm one of you, but we still were able to win the gold. That was very special.
Bruce, to the extent that I know sports, and I was a would-be athlete in my own mind for many years, but only in my own mind, there's a temptation of many to separate, if you will, religious identity, Jewish identity, and sports, keep them completely separate. You've taken a different path. Any consequences for, if you will, being so vocal as a Jew and as a friend of Israel on your sports career?
Yeah, remind me to get to that, but let me start off by talking about being Jewish in sports. Well, I want to get to that because that's the heart of the matter. So growing up in Boston, I saw real racism. I saw black and white violence against one another. And a lot of it had to do with a lack of ignorance, a lack of exposure to one another. So therefore, I also lived through forced busing. Judge Garrity in the early 1970s, they were trying to integrate the city of Boston. And so we had African Americans that would be sent out to the suburbs in a program called the METCO program, which actually was very successful. But within the city of Boston, they were moving Irish Catholic whites from Hyde Park in South Boston into Roxbury and vice versa, and it was just it was a disaster. I also grew up in Boston where there was great ethnicity. You had the Italian North End, you had the Irish South Boston, you had a lot of Portuguese population that lived in north parts of North Boston. You had the Jews of Mattapan and Dorchester. You had the African American community in Roxbury. So there was great ethnicity, but there was also great division. Where there was no division was on the playground. When I would go to the playground and we'd play pickup stickball, or we'd play basketball with the chain nets that were outdoors, I didn't see any difference between a white or black or a Christian or a Jew or a Catholic, more they were more Catholics than Christians. I just wanted to pick 3 or 4 guys out there that could play defense and get me the ball so we could stay on the court. And truly was frustrated growing up Jewish, getting off the bus and going to a teammate's house after school because my parents may be working or something like that, and going over there to do homework or just maybe play after school. And I can't tell you how many times the parents would take the kid in the kitchen and go, of all the kids in school, you got to bring back a Jew? Like, really? Or how many girls I was dating that maybe weren't Jewish and getting the same sort of reception. And so I began to see it as wow, this is a real problem. Like, this is a real issue for families and for people. And I didn't get it. Well, maybe I got it, but I'll tell you what it did. It bothered me. It bothered me a great deal. And so rather than going to Boston University or Northeastern, my mother went to BU, my dad went to Northeastern, there were decent-sized Jewish populations there. I went to Boston College. I went to a Jesuit school for 2 reasons. One, BC was a pretty big-time sports program, and I was still thought myself good enough to walk onto the basketball team. And also because I kind of started from the very beginning, getting into the work of exposing myself into the non-Jewish world, into the non-Jewish sports world, potentially playing sports. And I had to put my hands up and fight because I was, called out for being Jewish. And one way I used to actually avoid some fights is I would tell them, yeah, I'm Jewish. I'm also Israeli. You want some of this? Like being Israeli even back then meant that I was going to be a tough Jew and not somebody that was going to be pushed around, so on and so forth. But I did like the idea of exposing myself to non-Jewish folks and having them like me, having them respect me, have them recognize that I was no better than they were, but I was no worse, and breaking down stereotypes by simply exposing myself, my love for my country, my love for my friends, and just being a mensch and being the Jewish man that I was taught to be, the very best of being a Jewish man, and the responsibility of not being adding to a stereotype or anything, because I wasn't just representing my family name. I was representing my people. And so that's how I started to blend being Jewish and sports. And yes, certainly taking a stand, being so visibly Jewish, has it hurt me in recruiting? Of course it has. Have there been families that have gone, he's what? Oh no, we're not going there. But look, there are plenty of kids. God's blessed me, David, more than I deserve. I actually think there's a purpose behind that blessing, quite frankly, to give me the platform that I have right now. It's been worth it. And right now, because I've been in the Final Four, they're not going to fire me today. I'm okay. My job is safe.
More than safe, you've taken your players from time to time to Israel. You've exposed them to the reality of Israel. Yes?
Yes, 100% yes. We don't need to tell them our story. We just need to take them to Israel. David, as you know, when we're asked, or we ask when we're in Israel, what can we do? What more can we do? How can we help? They say, come back and visit and bring others, would you? They get off the plane. They go to the beaches of Tel Aviv. They can't tell the difference between whether they're or spring break in Fort Lauderdale. And the beautiful people, the fitness, the color, the variety, the tolerance. For me, David, again, as a basketball coach, trying to bring people together. That's what I do. That's my nature. That's how we've been successful. And so I was trying to bring Catholics and Jews and blacks and whites together as a young man. I do that as a coach. So that's sort of been my secret sauce. Is to me, Jerusalem, and I know I'm not going where you want me to go here, should bring us together. Like it's where all the faith started. Abraham, obviously, with Ishmael and Isaac, and Jesus being born in Bethlehem and living his entire life as a Jew in Israel. I'm like, look, that connects us. And that's sort of where I am. And so when you bring people to Israel, you don't need a whole lot of pre-talk, or maybe you don't have to read a ton of books. Just go over there and feel it. Go over there and see it. And see how happy and how thrilled and how grateful our people are, the Jewish people are, to be back in that land, to be in that homeland. They act and they live like my grandfather lived when he came to this country, when this country saved him. He loved this country. He was grateful to this country, like our early forefathers when they came to this country. And one of our greatest problems right now in this country is we're not teaching our children to love this country. We are not a perfect union, no, but we're the best place in the entire world. And second might be Israel, and third's not even close. And we don't teach that. We just teach about what a pathetic place we are, how unfair it is, the rich and the poor, and all this racism and all this. Yeah, we got our issues. But I love taking people to Israel, love taking teams to Israel with my work through Athletes for Israel.
Bruce, and it's fantastic what you're doing, but the reality that we're all facing is we won't be able to take the majority of Americans to Israel physically. We're talking about too many tens of millions of people. In the meantime, Israel's image has taken a battering in too many places, as you and I both know. From your perspective, what's gone wrong? Israel was once the darling of the West, and now it's the whipping boy for so many. What's gone wrong? And more importantly, what can we do about it?
Well, it's a phenomenal question. To think you could ask a basketball coach, because I might possess the answers. That's you're asking a problem that's existed for 4,000 years. So here we go. I go back to what I said before, and this is something that Ron Dermer told me one time, and that is that, the people that love America in America, they also love Israel. You think about that. The people that love America and think there's a difference between good and evil, right and wrong, and the people that believe that the United States of America has a responsibility to be the guiding light and lead in this world, which I do. Those people in this country are not anti-Semitic, and they still have a very high regard for the state of Israel. And what Ron was saying, the best way for America to continue to be a great ally for Israel is for America to love America first. And I thought it was profound. I thought it was interesting. I really hadn't gone through that. I don't understand how on October 8th, after 45 Americans were murdered, raped, kidnapped, tortured, we've got college kids on these college campuses talking about freeing Palestine. They don't know what free Palestine means, or free Palestine from the river to the sea. That means free Palestine of the Jews. That means from the river to the sea, we're either going to kick the Jews out or going to kill them. That's what it means. That's what they're chanting for. And so if you take the word Jew out of that equation and you replace it with black or women or gay or anything, the world in this country certainly wouldn't have it. They wouldn't tolerate it. But because it's the Jews, they do. And I do not have an answer for why. I don't. I just know that it exists. And so for me, my way of thinking is two things. Number one, we are going to protect ourselves from the people that want to harm us or kill us. Israel is a great example of that right now, where there's a concentration of us in Israel. Or there's a concentration of us in Brooklyn. Or there's a concentration of us in certain cities around the country. We got to protect ourselves from our enemies. At the same time, we've got that responsibility to be God's chosen people and to be above the fray with how we work, with how we treat people, with how generous we are, with how kind we are, with how hard we work, how intelligent we'll be, how patient we are. And not get, there's a combination of some of us in this country, American Jewry, got a big fat wake-up call on October 7th. I hope they did. As to the realities of what's going on over there in Israel. Now, look, everybody's got a different opinion. Like I always say, you ask 3 Jewish guys, you're going to get 30 opinions. I mean, that's just how it is. I can say that I'm Jewish. We've got to stop apologizing for basically doing what God commanded us to do, and that is returning to our Jewish homeland. And we got to wake up to the fact that, yes, I'm working with the Abraham Accords. I have donated. One of the largest donations I've ever made through the U.S. Israel Education Association was to Palestinian business leaders in Hebron in support of the Judea-Samaria Chamber of Commerce. I wanted this Jewish basketball coach to help these Palestinian business leaders be successful, knowing that their best way to peace and prosperity is to be able to recognize that a cooperation with the state of Israel is way better for their children than their children being raised to want Palestine to be free from the river to the sea. And so I absolutely believe that both is possible. But what the world does not understand, and part of this is Israel's fault, and part of it is our fault. They don't know who's right. They don't know who to believe. Did the Jews really steal the land when they came back? And so many came in escaping the pogroms and escaping, in Zionism and all that. Or certainly after World War II, they were, my goodness gracious, all of a sudden you've got thousands and thousands and maybe a couple million coming back to the homeland. We did not tell the story very well. We did not tell a story about what happened in 1948 and leading up to that and what's happened since. And the fact of the matter is, as you know, David, there are 2 million Israeli Arab citizens that are living their best lives in the state of Israel. And when you go visit, you understand that. We need to continue to get people, Arabs, leaders, people that are in the Knesset, people that are in judiciary, people that are in health service, people that are in education, people that are Arabs that are serving in the IDF, to be able to talk about and tell the stories over and over again about how their life is so much better because they're taking advantage of all the freedom that is available to them as Israeli citizens. At the same time, we've got to recognize partly the problem that we created, I believe, when we were able, God bless, in 1967 to defend ourselves and be able to take, to be able to conquer, to defend and to capture Judea and Samaria, where over 80% of our Bible is written. And so when I talk to people who are really concerned about either a two-state solution, or really concerned that maybe we did steal the land and stuff, I said, tell me about Hebron, would you? Just tell me about Hebron. Because all I know that when I read in Genesis about how when Jacob was dying, and he placed his hand underneath Joshua's thigh and he said, don't leave me here in Egypt. Take me back to the land where my father's buried, where his family was buried. He was talking about Hebron. He was talking the cave of the patriarchs. He was talking for a piece of land that Abraham overpaid for to make sure that nobody would dispute that it wasn't done properly. That is in Samaria. And so therefore, actually, no, it's in Judea, isn't it? It's in Judea. And so, to me, there's nothing disputed about that. And the fact that there is the Arab world, or specifically the Palestinians, believe it's theirs, it's not. It is not. And when Israel did not declare, in my opinion, Israel did not declare sovereignty over the land that they captured, they sent the world a really big message. We're not sure it's ours either. We're not sure. Well, if Israel's not sure that it is, then why should the rest of the world be? And we created and allowed the people to stay, which is great. We allowed them to stay. There were 160,000 Arabs living in Israel in 1948. There are now over 6 million, or probably about 5 million. There has been no genocide, none. That is not a genocide. But I think Israel made some mistakes. And not telling the rest of the world, no, we're pretty certain this is ours. And if Israel had autonomy over that land, everybody, Christians, Jews, Muslims, would all be better off.
Bruce, you've covered a lot, and there's a lot more to cover. Unfortunately, the time is shrinking rapidly. But let me ask you this. You're not only in the world of sports, you're also on a college campus. And so much of the Jewish world's attention has been on our campuses. What's Auburn been like since October the 7th? And what can we learn, if anything, from the Auburn example?
Dave, one thing we learn is this. There is such an incredible misnomer about anti-Semitism in the South. Yes, at one time there was the Ku Klux Klan and the far right, and they were loud and they were vocal, and what they did was awful. But there is virtually none of that left anymore, or very, very little. I see none of it here at Auburn. And probably the reason is there aren't that many Jewish people here, but there are. We have a synagogue. We're comfortable. We have a Hillel. It's a wonderful place to come for a Jewish student because of our evangelical Christian friends. They simply will not have the people, the Jewish people, who are descendants of their Savior, Jesus. They're not having it. They're simply not, and they believe that Israel belongs to the Jewish people, and so it's not been a problem at all living in Auburn. I also grew up in Boston, David, and I remember being absolutely in awe of Harvard, Cambridge, man. Every smart kid in my school, going if they could get it. I applied to Harvard, no chance, couldn't get it. Would have double my GPA and my SAT scores. Not happen. But think of all the great doctors and lawyers and scientists and business leaders, and the best and the brightest in the world went to Harvard. And you know what? There was a time when 25 to 30% of them were Jewish. That was pretty cool. Not anymore. what has happened to our Ivy League institutions, how foreign money, foreign students, and a rise of anti-Semitism that has been tolerated and even in some cases promoted by their admission standards and the leadership. I think that's a huge problem for our country right now. And as we're worried about our future, we think the anti-Semitism right now is bad. I think it's only going to get worse if we don't tackle this problem. And it has far less to do with why we've lost the argument, because Israel is trying to win this war against an enemy that wants them dead. Hamas can no longer exist when this is over, or the 900 soldiers, average age of 30, and the almost 400 orphans that have been created in the state of Israel, fighting a war they did not start. These lives will be lost and in vain if we don't defeat Hamas. The only blessing at the end of the day, they gave their life for the state of Israel and the protection of her people, and it was to eliminate this threat from existing. And I know it's not pretty, but I'm not having the fact that the atrocities and some of the terrible things that take place in war is the reason why there's a rise in anti-Semitism. I disagree with that.
And you make a very powerful case, Bruce. We really have just about a minute left, and I've got to slip in because I'm sure when JBS viewers heard you a moment ago on evangelical Christians, some of them recoiled and said, but wait a second, aren't they all out to convert us? And if we're not convertible, aren't we all going to be consigned to hell? Give us the short response, having lived in the South for as long as you have.
You know, my evangelical Christian friends are always going to pray that I'm saved. That's their doctrine, and I get it. And at the end of the day, someday when I get there, I'm going to get there and ask Jesus, why did you have to say the only way to get there is through me? Because it created a real problem for us down here, and I don't understand it. I'm actually glad that Jesus put a larger population in a position where they could get to know our God, and we could enjoy the very, very same benefits. The evangelical Christians are not trying to convert me, and that certainly was a strong.
And you're not convertible either, I gather.
No, not convertible. I'm proud to be Jewish,
and that comes through loud and clear, Bruce. I got to slip in one last question. There are rumors out there, there's some news reports that you may be considering a different future from your sports and basketball career. Anything you can share with us about that?
Well, David, listen, I know I'm not doing this for political reasons. I'm doing this for survival. And I'm doing this because I think God's given me all this success to put this platform and call out Edon Alexander's name and ask for him to be returned and so on and so forth. I love Auburn. I love coaching basketball. But yes, there are some issues that I'm very, very passionate about. And I've read those reports too, but you'll be the first to know if I'm ever decide to not be Auburn's basketball coach. Right now, I'm all in Auburn.
And JBS viewers, I don't want you kept out of the reports, but the reports suggest that Bruce may be considering a political run. So stay tuned. Bruce, we got to wrap it up here with my thanks for making yourself available to the JBS audience, and especially my admiration for your proud identity and your passionate defense of Israel and the Jewish people. Bruce, thank you. You've just heard from what I described to you as a legendary sports figure in the United States, a great patriot, Bruce Pearl. Looking forward to seeing you again next week, JBS viewers. Meanwhile, as always, thank you for watching Defending Israel. I'm David Harris. Bye-bye.